everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Gears and Glory. It's just me, Soph, today. We've been busy. There's also not a lot going on. So, this episode is actually going to be the beginning of a new series, which I don't actually really know what we're gonna call yet. I have the nerdiest name picked out, which is equals Formula One, like Excel style, but that's also because I love Excel. So, pending the name, F1 101 probably is already taken. But this is just a little Kickstarter guide for people wanting to get into Formula One. I've had a lot of personal friends actually ask me for something like this of like, what do I need to know about the sport to like get into it? So this is that fan service for my personal friends. So I'm finally getting around to it. I will be sending them the link to this episode. So hi Waleed, this is for you. So, in the grand scheme of things, it felt to me like the best place to really start thinking about and talking about, Formula One and like what it is to just kind of get a lay of the land and understand who the players are, but specifically starting with the teams themselves. So, obviously, it's team based, even though there's drivers and it's kind of individual to a degree, it's a team based sport, really. This season, the 2026 season, there are 11 teams, which previously there had been 10. I'll get into that. And each team has only 2 drivers. So a total of 22 drivers on the track at any given moment, maximum, unless you count the safety car. We'll get into it. And I think somebody knocked on my door. Oh my God. What? It wasn't my door. I'm in a new apartment, everyone. Hello to the new backdrop. This is my kitchen. I don't know where I'm going to record yet. Anyways, there's a total of 11 teams, 22 drivers, 2 drivers per team, total of 22 active competing drivers on the track at any given moment. So with that, knowing that there's drivers and there's teams, there's 2 championships to keep in mind when keeping track of the sport and like keeping track of the points and what everything means, which will give context to the way I'm about to talk about all the teams. This is the teams. Maybe I'll put text here. The teams. I probably will forget. So there's the 2 championships. We have the World Drivers Championship, which is often referred to as the WDC. This is the individual drivers collecting points for themselves as part of the team and how they stack up in that list. So it'll be like Max Verstappen versus Lewis Hamilton versus Charles Leclerc. The other championship to be aware of is the World Constructors Championship. In this case, constructor, where instead of drivers, it's constructor, it is the team itself. So, I'm basically giving a little bit of this lead up because I'm going to go through all of the teams as of April 21st US time, from order of the back of the Constructors Championship to the team with the most points. So from least to most. And we'll get into the lore, who the big players are in the teams. But another piece that I wanted to bring up before I got into everything is some terminology. So one term that people use to refer to the group of people participating is the grid. So there's 11 teams on the grid. There's 22 drivers on the grid. Technically, the grid is like the literal starting grid. So like where the cars line up before the race starts is like the grid. But also it can kind of be used to like almost like the league. So just that is a really helpful term to know if you don't really know what it means. Might be a little bit mansplainy, so for that I apologize. But yeah, like I mentioned, I'm going to be going through all the teams from the back of the constructors with the least amount of points to who's leading the constructors championship right now. So without further ado, I'm going to get right into it. Try and keep this one punchy and short. There's a lot of teams this season. So according to the F1 website, as of the last time I checked, the very back of the grid is Aston Martin. Their full technical government ID name is Aston Martin Aramco Formula One Team. Commonly referred to, like I mentioned, as Aston Martin. You'll see their initials also AM thrown around. The colors are like a really nice emerald green. I almost want to say like the kind that you see like on Beetles, like the bugs, not the car. And they also have like a yellow and a black and white, I think, too. I think the yellow throws me off a little bit. I don't know how I feel about the yellow. But I have a couple of pieces of lore for them. So they debuted on the grid in 1959 and they participated in the 1960 season under Aston Martin. Then they were gone from the grid for a very long time until like 2008 when there was some advocacy to get Aston Martin back into F1. And they were in the sport prior to 2008 as like a sponsor of other teams. So they sponsored Red Bull Racing, but they didn't rejoin the sport proper. Um, until 2021, so like relatively recently they like joined the sport properly, under investment from Lawrence Stroll, who's one of the team principals, which I'll get into later, and one of the big investors. He's also one of his own drivers' fathers. So like Lawrence Stroll bought and owns Aston Martin Aston Martin Aramco Formula One team, is the team principal, and also his son is like on the team. People don't really like that. People think that Lance is there because his dad owns the team. Maybe we get into that when we talk about the drivers a little bit more specifically. But Lawrence Stroll is one of the team principals, kind of in a management perspective. There is also Adrian Newey, as of the time of recording, as of right now. There's a lot of buzz around who's going to be in charge of Aston Martin. There's been some speculation here, but this was really big. It's supposed to be really big for Aston Martin. They are not currently doing super well, clearly, since we're starting with them from the back of the constructors. But Adrian Newey has been described as like being able to see air. Like his role in developing the car that he's worked on is huge. He developed a multiple championship winning Red Bull when he was there prior to moving to Aston Martin. So like this was supposed to be really, really big and really, really good for Aston Martin. They're really struggling right now. It has to do with the new regulations. That's a whole other conversation. But he's the team principal. How much of a role he'll have in like actually engineering the car is kind of still up in the air. And one thing I will include also for all the teams is the finishing positions in the Constructors' Championship for the past 5 years. So just kind of like get an idea of like where they've kind of landed. So Aston has been kind of in the middle of the pack until this season where they're like really dead last. But prior to this season where there were only 10 teams, 2021 they were 7th, 2022 they were 7th, 2023 and 2024 they were 5th at the end of it, both of it, and then last season in 2025 they were also 7th. So they're kind of middling, kind of falling behind, especially this season. But again, new regulation changes, asterisk. We'll see how it all shakes out by the end of the season. And once people, like teams, get a better idea of the regulations and they stop changing them. So second to last in 10th is Cadillac Formula One team. Cadillac, they are currently the only team on the grid without a naming sponsor. So Aston Martin had Aramco in the name. These are big sponsors. They're paying big money to be part of the name so that when the drivers have to say like, yes, I'm part of Aston Martin Aramco, like that's buzz for them. They pay for that. They pay big bucks to be in the name. Cadillac has no naming sponsor as of right now, of the time of recording. And they're new. This is their first season in Formula One. The colors are black and white on the car right now. Some people don't like the livery, which is like how the car is like designed visually. I like it. I like the black and white. So people said, do more color. Sure, whatever. I think it looks cool to have split down the middle, like one gradient one way, the inverse on the other. I think it looks really cool. But yeah, so we're watching them get their feet under them, which makes sense why they're at the back of the grid. Don't really know a ton about their team principal, Graham Loden. He's been part of different racing series with some endurance, Formula Renault, some Formula E, but I didn't see, well, Wikipedia didn't say anything about any roles in Formula One explicitly yet. So curious to see how that shakes out. But again, they're figuring themselves out. We'll see what they make of themselves. No historical context for them. This is literally it. So very curious. American team. We'll see how they do. Then, I should have looked at the points that they have. Let me open up the Formula One website. I think Aston Martin has none points, and I think Cadillac also has no points. Yeah. And then we have Williams in 9th. Williams has, count them, 2 points. Williams, their full name is Atlassian Williams F1 Team. If you use anything like Jira or any sort of Atlassian products at work, I use Jira at work, so I'm really partial to Atlassian. But that's the official name. Their colors are typically more blue, white, and black, but they've introduced some gold and yellow a little bit. They first joined the grid in 1977 and actually have been on the grid ever since. So they were previously family owned. Basically, like the guy who started the team owned it. His name was Frank Williams. And he owned it, was team principal from its inception, so from 1977 to 2013, at which point he didn't even like step aside. He just introduced his daughter, Claire Williams, to help be like co team principal. So Claire, let me just talk about Claire Williams for a second. She got a lot of heat because she was a woman. She got a lot of heat because she had a different management style and it's kind of a boys' club. But she did a lot for diversity, for getting people opportunities. Like she's the reason basically that like George Russell had the opportunity to be on her team to then be at Mercedes now. So like she's championed a lot of diversity and gender inclusion. And she and her father both managed the team together up until 2020 when they basically had to sell the team. It was not looking good. It was really struggling. And I think Claire shared some sentiment of like, we are no longer the best people to run this team. Like, we're going to hand it over to the people who are, which, I mean, we got 2 points, but last season was very good for them. So Claire is still around in the Formula One space. She's in Drive to Survive. I love hearing her input in Drive to Survive. Again, she got a lot of heat for things that I just don't think she should have gotten heat for. And unfortunately, Frank Williams did pass in 2021. May he rest in peace. But what a legacy for a team. And again, mentioning George Russell, Williams is actually, there's this thing called like sister teams where basically there's like a junior team and a senior team that are on the grid. So it just means that basically they can communicate a little bit more clearly. They can switch drivers a little bit more clearly. So we have Williams is kind of the sister team to Mercedes, of kind of like they will vet the junior drivers and let them get their feet under them before going then to the senior team to the Mercedes. I think that's changing a bit with the driver lineup that they have now at Williams. Again, we can get into that in the drivers episode. But the team principal now is James Vowles, who came from Mercedes. So again, part of that sister team mentality. And he has been doing a great job with the team, I think. They had a really strong season last season. And with the new regulations, we'll just see. But last season they were 5th. And then 2024 they were 9th. 2023 they were 7th. 2022 they were 10th at that point last. 2021 they were 8th. So they've kind of been doing progressively better. But once more, like the new regulations like are throwing a bone or a wrench into everything. A bone, whatever. They're throwing something in it and it's not going well. So we'll have to see. But Williams had a lot of promise coming out of last season. So there's a lot of hope. Another quote unquote new team is Audi. Audi is in 8th. They also have 2 points. So they're technically tied with Williams, but Audi was previously Stake, which was, so Audi's full name is Audi Revolut F1 Team. Again, naming sponsor. Previously was Stake F1 Team Kick Sauber was the name, which is crazy, but people really refer to them as Stake or Stake Kick Sauber. Stake and Kick are both sponsors. Sauber is like the actual car that was in. So like we know Sauber cars. They were green and black and white, like really green. And now they are black and gray and red. There's a lot of black and blue and gray and red and white going on. So like I understand why people are like more color and talking about like Cadillac livery, but I like the Audi. People also didn't like the Audi. I like it. I like it. So their colors are black, silver, and red now. They came on, so the team was Sauber. They came on to the grid in 1993 and have been on the grid in some way, shape, or form, have been bought out. So the car associated with this team has switched around. So they originally came on as Sauber. They shared some names with BMW. They at one point were going by Alfa Romeo before returning to Sauber. Now Audi. Basically, Audi bought out this team. So you know, it's been crazy. They've had a lot of changes. Stake was only part of the name since 2024 and had like that green Stake Kick Sauber, but now it's fully Audi. And Stake only came on, it like became part of the situation in like 2024. So they had 2024 and 2025 as Stake. Now it's Audi. So they've just had like a lot of change. Um, yeah, that's beside the point. So the team principal, this again is also going to get a little dicey. There's some stuff up in the air. This is why I love the sport. There's a lot of gossip going around. But basically, Mattia Binotto, who was part of Stake and now Audi, has been part of the picture for this team since 2024. Mattia Binotto was previously with Ferrari. People have a lot of feelings, me included, about how he ran the team and talked about his drivers at the time. We can get into that lore with the drivers, but basically, like, the sentiment is that Mattia Binotto did not believe in Charles Leclerc, his driver at the time, when it was like his one chance to do a run for the championship. I'm not caught up on the lore because this is a team-based episode, but he is team principal, was also alongside with Jonathan Wheatley, who was coming from Red Bull, previously at Benetton, which is a now defunct team. Again, they get bought out. But Jonathan Wheatley was a big part of Red Bull when they were really on a big winning streak. So one cool thing about Jonathan Wheatley, aside from that he's a sweetie pie, is and that he brushes his teeth with two toothbrushes at the same time. Watch the latest season of DTS, you'll know what I'm talking about. He what was I gonna say? Oh, he made his way to team principal. Like, he started in F1 as a junior mechanic. So like he like put in the work and like got himself to team principal. He has since left Audi since late March of 2026 of this year. There's no clear path forward really explicitly, but there's been a lot of speculation that he's going to be going to Aston because Aston is struggling so much. So I don't really know. Jonathan Wheatley was around for some pretty successful moments for Stake / Audi now last season, but it's tricky because we'll look at the past 5-year finishing positions. They've not really been known to be the best. So in 2021, they were 9th. And then the next year, they were 6th. And then they were 9th again. Then they were 10th in 2024, so dead last. And then last season, 2025, even with everything, they were still 9th. Everything being they had a podium with Nico Hulkenberg, and there was like a lot of stuff going on that was like really good for them. Like, they were scoring good points, was still not enough to be higher than 9th. So that takes us through Audi / Stake. And then next up, after Audi, we have in 7th place, Visa Cash App Racing Bulls. Everybody calls them VCARB. Just like the initials basically spell VCARB. This one's one where you'll hear people talk about a lot of historic names, because this team is Red Bull Racing's little like junior sister team. But they've had a lot of different names in the past. There's always been Racing Bulls in the name pretty consistently, or some sort of like bull imagery because of that relationship with Red Bull. So they've previously been Scuderia Toro Rosso, Toro being the bull part, and Scuderia AlphaTauri. I guess that has nothing to do. Maybe Tauri has to do. I don't really know. But they've had a lot of different names. So like people will, at least when they had switched to VCARB, it was a lot of, I think you'll even hear it in old episodes of ours, talking about like, oh, the Toro Rosso, oh, the AlphaTauri, oh, I'm sorry, I mean the Visa Cash App. But then everybody didn't like calling it the Visa Cash App or the Racing Bulls until VCARB showed up as like the name that people really fixated on. So you might hear them referred to as AlphaTauri or as Toro Rosso if people are like really confused or just like haven't talked about them in a really long time. But they've been VCARB for a couple seasons now. Their colors are mostly white with blue and some yellow as well. They are typically white with blue, I would say, is easy to recognize them on the track. They joined the grid in 2006 when Big Red Bull, so like their senior team again, bought Minardi to turn it specifically into their junior team. And so it was Toro Rosso for that period of time, for a really long time, from 2006 to 2019. Then in 2020, they became AlphaTauri. And then in 2024, again, lots of changes of names happen. They became VCARB with the Visa Cash App sponsorship component of it. So again, they develop a lot of drivers on this team. Right now, they have a full rookie on the team, and a not so full rookie, but just someone who's like newer to the F1 space. They have Liam Lawson and Arvid Lindblad. Obviously, they have Liam Lawson and Arvid Lindblad on their team, and so Arvid Lindblad and, well, I guess Liam as well, but Liam has some more seasons. Arvid Lindblad's fully new, getting their experience, getting their feet under them, with hopes, ideally, that one of them will, likely Arvid, because of lore that we'll get into in the drivers episode, get his chance, get their chances in the big teams. So again, this means that the drivers can swap really easily. Red Bull has been known to do this with several drivers. They have Max Verstappen, and so unless you can cut it alongside Max Verstappen, they will flip-flop people from the junior team to the senior team to just see what sticks and what works and what makes the most sense for any given amount of time. You only get a certain number of driver changes a season, like official seat changes, so they have to be mindful of that. But it is something that they do. Again, Laurent Mekies was the team principal here. He's now the team principal at Red Bull. And who was under him is Alain Permain, who has worked for Renault and Alpine in the past, Lotus and Benetton as well, and has been part of Formula One in 1989. He is now the team principal. So they've had leadership established there since last season. Christian Horner was the one who was replaced. We'll get to that with Red Bull, which is actually next, which is wild. But Laurent Mekies moved away from the team to replace Christian Horner at Red Bull, which I'll talk about shortly. But before we get into that, again, kind of a middling team. As we're moving up the order in the constructors, you'll see that the places start to get higher and higher in the past 5-year finishing positions. But they've been in 2021 and going forward till now, they've been 6th, 9th, 8th again, and then 6th last season. So had kind of a lull in the middle, but kind of closer to the middle where we're starting to see these teams be. So next on the grid in, what place is this? 6th place, we have Red Bull Racing. We have Oracle Red Bull Racing, again, Oracle being the naming sponsor. People will refer to Red Bull Racing as RB also. And their colors are really similar to the junior team, to VCARB, but the blue is more of a navy. It's a little bit of yellow still. They have like a red or maroonish color, so like darker versions, and there's way less white. Like the white is like an accent or like the sponsor names. It's largely navy blue, I would say the car is. It's a little bit more like blue now. It's less navy. It's like a little lighter, a little bit more saturated, which I really like because it connects back to like Sebastian Vettel era. Sebastian Vettel being one of the great drivers that they had that won them a bunch of championships. So Red Bull came onto the scene when they bought out Jaguar and joined the grid in 2005, and they've been around since then. And like I mentioned, they had a huge winning streak and saw a ton of success in the 2010s. So 2010 through 2013 were basically back-to-back championships for Red Bull. I believe both for the constructors and for the drivers with Sebastian Vettel, which is just crazy to have so much success. Christian Horner, as I mentioned, was the team principal for literally 20 years. So 2005 to 2025, when he was replaced by Laurent Mekies, he was in charge. He was there for the huge winning streak with Sebastian Vettel was part of that conversation. There's a lot of drama that went on with that he was a part of. And then signing Max Verstappen, getting Max Verstappen into the seat, having him be the youngest driver to do so many things for such a long time. Like, Christian Horner was that guy for a very long time. That said, Christian Horner had a scandal in 2025 where there was, inappropriate behavior. There were WhatsApp messages that he was going to have to basically like go to hearings and like, have repercussions in one of those, whether by choice or like, quit or we'll fire you type situations. Nobody really, it's like not, it's gossip, which I love, is why he's no longer on the team. And so because it's the sister team and it's a little easier and there's a lot more communication, they brought Laurent Mekies up last season. So this is actually Laurent Mekies' first full season with Red Bull as team principal. So we'll see what he can do. Asterisk all over again because of the new regulations. But Red Bull has previously been very, very strong. So it's shocking to see that they're in 6th place right now, because in 2021 they were 2nd, then they were 1st and 1st. So they won back-to-back constructors championships in 2022 and 2023, which were also very strong for Max Verstappen. I believe he had drivers championships those years. In 2024 they were 3rd, and then in 2025 they were 3rd also. But again, like wildly toward the top of the constructors typically, and yet 6th. Like the car's not working this season. So shocking Just shocking. But like that's what the new regulations can do. They can like absolutely turn everything on their head. Again, in a shocking turn of events, Liv, don't be mad at me for saying this. Alpine is ahead of Red Bull. So BWT Alpine F1 team. Alpine spelled like Alpine, but pronounced Alpine because they are French. They're in 5th place. So we're now clear to the top half of the teams. BWT Alpine F1 team. Alpine, everyone calls them Alpine. They had a nickname for a little while of the pink Mercedes as the car because they basically just like looked at what Mercedes were doing and then copied it. And then their colors are pink and mostly blue this season, but you have some colors in there, and you know, pink is fun. They've been on the grid for kind of a while. They've had a lot of those like buyouts, change of names. So they've been on the grid since 2021 as Alpine, but they've kind of been always under like the Renault umbrella. So Renault was the engine provider. I believe this is the first season they're not using their own engines. So they've become what's called a customer team, where they're using another team's developed engine, and power unit is another term you'll hear for that. Outside of using their own, which would have been the Renault one. So they were Toleman in 1981, then they were Benetton, then they were Renault, then they were Lotus, then they went back to Renault, which was yellow team, and now they're Alpine. So kind of crazy, a lot of names. But I want to talk about the team principals. Because they've had a lot of like scandals happen with them, which is just kind of crazy. So there's like always something going on with Alpine. So gosh, what even year was this? This must have been 2023. This must have been 2022 or 2023. Otmar Szafnauer. I'm going to have to make sure that the captions spell his name correctly. He's hilarious to me, the way he posts on social media. But Otmar Szafnauer was the team principal, had managed his team relatively well, but had a very public falling out with Oscar Piastri, who is now at McLaren, because there was like some basically press release that they made saying like, Oscar Piastri has signed to drive with Alpine for the 2024 season or something like that. And Oscar Piastri had to then make a statement saying like and it's a meme. This is why you need to know the lore. It's like a meme of like any statement saying that I have signed with Alpine for the season are false. I have not signed to drive for Alpine. So you can look up the whole post. We'll talk about it in the drivers episode about Oscar lore in the future. But they had like a big falling out with that. Basically, Oscar had been their development driver, helping them develop the cars and figure out what the cars are, and their junior driver, and they had invested a lot in him. But he wound up signing with McLaren. So just huge, very, very public falling out. So after Otmar Szafnauer came Ollie Oakes, who he had some scandal, which I still don't even really know what it is, where his brother was involved and their feeder series teams were involved in high tech. And I think we literally talked about this in an episode, but like they had a huge where like his brother went to jail and like Ollie Oakes had to like step back and like basically like quit from his team principal position. And then they bring in Flavio Briatore. Now, Flavio Briatore is a very wealthy Italian man who scares the crap out of me. He had previously been, I believe, at Benetton. And there's an episode this season of Drive to Survive where they talk about Flavio and Jonathan Wheatley. They were at Benetton when Benetton was winning with like, I think it was Fernando Alonso. All beside the point, they have very different styles. Jonathan Wheatley's a sweetie pie. Flavio Briatore scares the crap out of me. He's frightening to me. We have a whole episode called A Deep Dive into Crashgate that talks all about what Flavio did. But basically, there was a big scandal with now Flavio in the past having basically fixed races, or allegedly fixed races, cheated, got found out, and basically received functionally a lifetime ban from Formula One. But here he is. Riddle me that. I don't know. They were just like, I just like don't really understand that, which is crazy. Also, he scares me. I don't know. Do with that what you will. Not really sure. Alpine has always been, yeah, sorry, for the past 5 years, finishing positions, Alpine has kind of been in the middle of the pack. We're in the midfield, is what this kind of space is referred to. It's not the back of the pack, it's not the front, it's the midfield. So these midfield teams that are kind of consistently basically just mid, like nothing super great. In 2020, whoa, I did these in a different order. Huh. I wonder if these are in the right order. In 2024, maybe they were sixth, and then in 2023 they were sixth again. What? Why did I not do 2025? Anyway, they've been sixth, fourth, and then fifth and fifth from 2024, starting in 2024 and sixth, ending in 2020 and fifth. Last season, I guess, let me find out. 2025. In 2025, they were dead last in 10th. Maybe that's why. Anyways, so they had a really bad run of it last season, but are having a better run now, especially because they're ahead of Red Bull, but have typically just kind of been in the middle of the pack. Fourth, fifth, sixth, basically. The next team, which is also kind of shocking, that is in fourth in the Constructors, which is not a team we typically see in fourth in the Constructors, is Haas, Haas. This year, their full official name is TGR Haas F1 Team. TGR stands for Toyota Gazoo Racing, which is a big rally racing like sponsor and like presence in the rally space. And obviously Toyota is a car manufacturer and they have like a bunch of stuff going on. But this Toyota Gazoo is the official technical partner for Haas F1 Team. They like had a whole press release about it, which is literally what I'm referencing for this. And they're not just paying for the sponsorship, but what the being like the official technical partner means is like they're also sharing a lot of like data and information and learnings and knowledge. So the idea with this partnership is not just the sponsorship of it, but the development that the car will have, which I mean, seeing as they're in fourth, something's going right. Excuse me. So their colors also red, white, and black. No silver, so not Audi. I would say they're typically more white and red with black accents than any other color to like recognize them. But they were the only American team on the grid until Cadillac joined this year. So they were kicked off, I think it was in 2014, but they didn't join F1 until 2016 with their very first and longest serving team principal, which is the GO, Gunther Steiner. Literally funniest guy ever. He's known for a lot of really witty lines and really clever and just like not giving a shit attitude on Drive to Survive. Like he made Drive to Survive. I think him and people will largely also say probably Daniel Ricciardo, their presence on Drive to Survive really made the series click and work. So he was the team principal from 2016 until 2023, until his contract was not renewed. I think Gene Haas, you know, he's got the name. He was unhappy, I believe, with how Gunther was running the team, and they just like had disagreements. So the choice was made to not renew Gunther's contract. And under Gunther was working Ayao Komatsu, which is where I believe his connections to Toyota come in for their current partnership with Toyota. But Ayao Komatsu is now the team principal. He's been the team principal since 2024. Ayao was also previously at Renault and Lotus. And followed Romain Grosjean, who was one of the first drivers to be part of the Haas team. He came along with Romain, and that's how he got to Haas and then put in work there and stayed there and now is team principal. So there's something to be said about people who like hunker down and put the work in to move up the ranks. But Haas in fourth typically has not done super well. Their finishing position in 2021 was 10th, so last. In 2022, they were 8th. 23, they were 10th again, last. 2024, they were 8th. 2025, they were 7th. So there was like a really slow progression. This season, they're doing freaking awesome. And now we've made it to the top 3 teams. So in third, we have McLaren MasterCard F1 team. Until last season, they were the only team with no naming sponsor. They were the last one to kind of add it. which is the MasterCard, which works really well for their colors, MasterCard being like that orange and red. That being said, if you go to any McLaren employee or a McLaren fan and tell them that their color is orange, they will correct you. Technically, it's called papaya. And so that's where you get a lot of the terminology about like papaya rules of like how they manage their rules of engagement. It's a whole last season thing. You'll hear us talk about it a lot if you listen to some of last season's episodes. But they are kind of that papaya orange color and black mostly. I think they have a blue. I'm not really sure. But the main color is papaya. Everything is the freaking orange color. McLaren became part of the F1 grid in 1966. So they've been around for a really, really long time. They've been consistently on, whether good or bad performance, just kind of always there since then. To be offering some context, what a way to say that sentence. Formula One officially started in 1950, which is why we had the F1 75 last season. It was their 75th anniversary of existing as like a sport, organization. So, while right now they are super papaya colored, some of the iconic liveries and colors that we've seen from them are Ayrton Senna era. Ayrton Senna being one of the greats of Formula One history, Brazilian driver, unfortunately died in a crash. Bummer, to say the least. Just really devastating, actually, like super devastating for the sport, and called in like a lot of safety concerns. Was Ayrton Senna era's like white and red. This was when like cigarettes could still be like cigarette brands could still be sponsors, and like alcohol brands could still be sponsors. I think alcohol can still be, but I don't think cigarettes can. Tobacco basically. But the Marlboro red and white car, that's McLaren. And then they had a really cool like all silver and red. I think it was like the Vodafone logo. It was red. And it was like all silver when like Lewis Hamilton was just getting into the sport. He started with McLaren. And that car's like silver and very, very cool. So they have some iconic liveries from the past, but are very, very papaya now. The current team principal and management structure is set up basically with two guys at the head of it. So we have Zak Brown, who won Wheel of Fortune, which is crazy. He used that money to buy himself like basically racing gear, his first kart. And that's how he himself got into racing. Is a huge business entrepreneur also. Basically got his way to some C-suite level with McLaren and is like heading their racing department. So it's not just the Formula One, but it's also IndyCar and some of the other racing formula, like single seater and other racing series that he manages. So he does some historical driving still, I believe. And he's an avid car collector. Well, that's like in one of the Drive to Survive episodes as well for this latest season. But he'll do some driving still, but largely just managing. He joined McLaren in 2016. The other guy we have on the other side is Andrea Stella. Andrea Stella, very Italian name, was at Ferrari. And he was there for 14 years from 2000 to 2014. And then he joined McLaren in 2015. So he only has 1 year on Zak Brown in terms of tenure. And became the team principal in 2022. So while Andrea is the team principal, Zak Brown also has a very big role as being like head of like racing for all of McLaren, including outside of Formula One. So there was a lot of tension last season between these two guys because basically it was perceived that Andrea was basically rooting for Oscar Piastri and Zak Brown was rooting for Lando Norris in the championship. They were the closest battle alongside Max Verstappen, who was coming in from outside of McLaren, from the Red Bull team, if you don't know that. So there was a lot of tension for them. They didn't wind up picking anyone explicitly, but there was still a lot of tension in terms of how the strategies played out because a strategy could benefit or, shoot someone in the foot. And depending on which one they chose, it got, I would say it got a little tense. It got really tense. It was a point of contention for a lot of the decisions that they were making and a lot of commentary coming out of it. But now that we're toward the top of the grid, we'll see the same in the finishing positions for the past 5 years for McLaren. So in 2021, they were 4th, then they were 5th, then they were 4th. And then for the last 2 full seasons, so 2024 and 2025, they won the Constructors' Championship. So you get like a lot of money. And the thing that you get out of winning the Constructors' Championship and like why, it's not just like bragging rights, but it's like so much money. And also they get like development time and considerations for that as well. In second, I haven't been saying points. Too late. In second, we have Ferrari. You can look them up on the Formula One website. Also, we're going to have a race soon in Miami, finally. So they'll be changing anyway. We have Ferrari in second in the constructors right now. Their full name is Scuderia Ferrari HP. Also, for a very long time, Ferrari did not have a naming sponsor. Recently, they added HP. They added it to the livery of the car. The car's red. The livery has this big blue circle on it now. It's a whole thing. But their colors are red and white mostly, black also. There's also a little bit of Ferrari yellow. That is a very specific color. There is on occasion also Ferrari blue, like a powdery blue of like old school, like 1950, like the first Formula One race powder blue, which is a hard to find color. Miami, I believe 2 years ago, so 2024, had some powder blue merch, but they said, oh, we're gonna make the car blue. It was just them revealing that they had put like the HP logo, like it was like half blue, whatever. It was a big miss, I think. I really like the red. Either leave it or commit to something else, but don't like do half of whatever. But one really cool thing about Ferrari, outside of it being Ferrari and like just like a cool sports car, manufacturer, is they are the only team currently on the grid who has been on the grid since the sport began, like I mentioned, in 1950. So this is going on 76 years of being in the sport, which is just so super cool. Ferrari has a really interesting attitude toward their team principals. So they kind of get to this place where they'll put someone in, they'll let them try, they start to fail, they don't give them enough time to turn those failures into progress. And by the time anything like that could start to happen, they've switched the team principal. So they've kind of had a track record of swapping people in and out a lot. Almost like how Red Bull does with drivers and swapping people in and out. They've kind of had a similar approach with team principals. But as I mentioned, Mattia Binotto is with Audi. He was previously with Ferrari. Now it's Frederic Vasseur, which is a very interesting. Mattia Binotto, Italian name. Frederic Vasseur, French name. He's French. I love Fred personally. I think he's doing a good job with how he's managing the team. Also, he signed Lewis Hamilton, which is like a huge check plus under his like title as team principal and his tenure with Ferraris. Like he's the guy who signed Lewis Hamilton. So he was really involved with the junior formulas, like really involved with the cohort of drivers like George Russell, Alex Albon, Charles Leclerc. Like they all have had relationships with him from when they were not yet in Formula One and going up through the feeder series, which are going to be like your F2, F3, those types of racing series. He also had a huge role in kickstarting Formula E as like a racing series, not even just like a team, but like the entirety of the thing, which is so cool. So he was with Sauber and Alfa Romeo before he was at Ferrari, and Charles Leclerc actually used to drive for Alfa Romeo back in the day before he got signed to Ferrari. So this relationship that they've had, again, part of like helping like those junior drivers, go to their big teams now. So they've had that relationship. Fred was there from 2017 to 2022. He's been at Ferrari since 2023. So not super long. There was talks that he would get replaced a couple years ago, maybe 2 years ago in 2024. But none of that has come out. He's clearly still there. So yeah, that's kind of it on Fred and team principals at Ferrari. The past 5 years finishing positions for Ferrari, they're like, just this far from being the best. So in 2021, they were third, then they were second, then third, then second. Last season, they were fourth, which was like the toughest year they've had in the past couple of runs. But they're like consistently in the top four teams. The top four teams are typically going to be Red Bull, Ferrari, Mercedes, and now McLaren. That fourth team kind of will bump around sometimes, but Red Bull has been very dominant, Mercedes has been very dominant, and Ferrari is always part of the conversation. So we have our number one team then, speaking of Mercedes, is Mercedes-AMG Petronas Formula One team. Mercedes. I think they're also called Silver Arrows on occasion. I haven't heard that one in a while, but I think it's something that people use to refer to Mercedes. It's like calling Tottenham Spurs or like West Ham Hammers, it's like one of those. Premier League for you. I'm just glad West Ham's out of the relegation zone. Sorry to all my Spurs fans. But Mercedes has been on the grid. They were part of the grid in the early days of Formula One, so 1954 to 55. But then they had like 2 seasons, and then they were basically gone until relatively recently. They returned in 2010. They bought out a team called Brawn, and turned it into the Mercedes that we know now. So then, like, they joined, they had these 4 great years, these great seasons of development. So 2010 to 2013. In 2014, they went on a huge winning streak, like annoyingly long winning streak. And this was the Lewis Hamilton era of basically they won everything from 2014 to 2021. Basically. 2021 was the first championship that Max won. It's just, they were like annoyingly good. Like how people feel about Red Bull in the recent past is like how people felt about Mercedes. I think people are okay with Mercedes being at the top of the championship this year because it's been long enough and we don't remember that they used to win everything. So I think if they just kept winning everything, it'd be really annoying. That's like not such a fun sport to watch if it's just the same result always. But basically when Mercedes bought out Brawn, they retained their team principal, which was Ross Brawn, the same name. It was his team. And then he handed off the team principalship to Toto Wolff, who's the current team principal in 2013. Toto Wolff, huge business entrepreneur, like personally owns part of the team. So kind of like a Lawrence Stroll situation, though I believe it came as team principal first and then he bought into the team. So he's like really invested in the success of the team, personally and professionally. He used to race himself, but he mostly has management experience. He gets to be married to Susie Wolff, who's like the coolest woman ever. The way that like Fred had a hand in creating and starting up Formula E, Susie Wolff, woman of all time, started Formula One Academy. Like this incredible opportunity as a feeder series, which don't forget, Formula One Academy is not Formula One for women. Formula One Academy is the platform to get women into Formula One. It is a feeder series. That's why they have the equivalent of an F4 car, and that's why the women are so young. They will go to other racing series like GB3, where Abby Pulling is now former F1 Academy champion, or do endurance racing like Dorian Pin is doing. Very French. Again, another Formula One Academy champion. So Susie Wolff, like, he gets to be married to her. Like, whatever. Mercedes is like, whatever. Susie Wolff, though. So they're married. Very cool. Susie Wolff actually used to be either a development testing driver for Mercedes. Like, Susie Wolff was a driver. I don't think she raced explicitly, but she was on the team. So cool. I could talk about her forever, clearly. But we'll get into the last finishing position. So again, because Mercedes is part of that top 4 that we really talk about a lot in the sport, their finishing positions are typically higher. In 2021, they won the championship. 2022, they were 3rd, then 2nd, then 4th, then 2nd last season. So they're solid. They're having a really good season this season. With the regulation changes, we'll have to see how that affects what the competition looks like and where people can take a bite out of them, but they are definitely in the lead right now. So that's all the teams. We have 11 of them right now. I did want to add a little bit of context also on, there haven't always been 11 teams. Clearly, we just added Cadillac. I mentioned that. There were 10 teams, but there were only 10 teams since 2017. So, like, we had about 10 years of only having 10 teams. I thought it was very much a norm, but no, there was an 11th team called Manor Team who left in 2017, and the sport has been back down to 10. So it hasn't actually been that long since we've had 11 cars on the grid. I did not look up the past, but I did look up a couple articles where historically there were allowed to be a lot more cars on the grid. So like it wasn't just like one team gets 2 cars. They were allowed to have like 3 or 4. But that was like really dangerous and like a bunch of people crashed a lot. And so they like limited that. Yeah, let's see this stat that I have. I forgot to type my sources. That's on me. There was a race that had 76 cars running at one point, and then only 16 finished. So it's clearly unsafe, and it's good that there's less cars. And that's why it's good that like the regulations are getting reviewed to make sure that everybody's safe, especially given the last race's crash between Franco Colapinto and maybe it was Gabby Bortoleto. I can't remember. There's a big crash basically of the way that the energy harvesting is working with the new battery component. That just like, it's good that they're making sure that things are safe for everybody involved. So that's almost an hour of me absolutely yapping about all of the Formula One teams we have. If there's anything I might have missed, Liv surely will be happy to do a follow-up episode with me on that. But the next episode we have planned in this series specifically is to go over the drivers, some of the lore, where they've been, how long they've been in the sport, any important things about them. So we'll talk about the drivers, we'll talk about the cars once we have like a lay of who the players are in terms of teams and drivers. We'll talk about the cars themselves, which is a developing thing. Like I mentioned, the regulations are getting updated for this season. Which kind of goes into the following episode of the rules, the governing bodies, basically the refs, and then the role of the money, how the weekends are structured, what strategy is remotely. So there's plenty to talk about, but for now I leave you with the teams. That's a yap sesh for sure. But yeah, we've got races coming up, so this will be a good one to pick back up in the summer break. So till then, bye.